Ordinance revisions.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. As you'll recall, we had some conversations in our work session last week wherein we talked about some need to reconcile the ordinance pertaining to parades and parade permits with regard to the special event guide and so on. And so we thought it would be helpful to take some time to discuss both, actually. The ordinance revisions and then maybe a couple of things that we've been working on with regard to the special event guide, some of which some of you have asked for. And so with that, Mr. Vice Mayor, if I could defer to the attorney for item 3 and then maybe to the clerk for item 4.
Okay.
Good.
Great. Vice Mayor, Council, based upon the discussions that we've had and kind of the difficulty we had in getting the parade ordinance along with the special events planning guide and policy, we looked at amending the parade ordinance, and we sent something home with you last week. And I looked at it again over this past week, and there are another couple of changes that I've inked in there. But it's a request that we have that we be permitted to bring this to your attention next week for your vote and consideration in a public hearing and first reading. And so hopefully we can do that, and I was hoping that we could do that in conjunction with the revisions that Fleur and her group were making to the special events policy. And I see that she's already has that ready, and that's before you as well. So I think this will maybe answer some questions of constituencies out there, whether it be the motorcycle group or other groups that want to engage in some type of an event. So with that, I'll answer any further questions, and the changes I'm looking maybe to make by next week, which will again be in red, it's some punky words and things of that nature. So I think there's one provision in there, I didn't catch it the first time around, about driving a streetcar or a trackless trolley through the vehicles participating in the parade. I don't think we'll have that problem. So
Trackless trolley.
I mean,
What is a trackless trolley? I don't know what that is. Anybody
Rich
have
has.
any questions for John on the revisions? No? All right, special events guide and policy revisions.
Your Honor, members of council, as you saw in your packet, we revised the special events guide. We took into consideration the liquor ordinance change, which included tips training for all servers and volunteers. We added that in. We had a couple of requests from the Natrona County Health Department. They asked us to add in information about emergency preparedness and if they had food, if they had an event with food. So we added that in for the health department, as well as some changes we made to just the categorization of events. Basically, we found out that almost every small even event would qualify as a special event under the current guide. And so we changed that, modified it, made it a little bit easier. So some small events now will no longer need to go through this process. We also changed the fees just to be more in line with what we think is fitting. So those changes were all highlighted, and you got a red line version in your packets. If there are any other changes, we're happy to make those now. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer those as well.
Okay.
I have one, if I may, and I may go with you. When I originally looked at it, and I may have missed it in the newest one, the insurance, like who to go through, who you could possibly go through, and the detailedness of you have to have this much coverage, is that in the special events guide? Because like when I had to do the insurance, it said you had to have 250,000 for this, 500,000 for this. Is that in either ordinance or in the events guide to let somebody know what they would have to, how much coverage they have to have, and who they could possibly go through?
Your Honor, yes, that it is.
Okay, I
So,
must have missed it.
we haven't specifically listed what you have to say, the amount, we don't have who you can go through. I believe we have information in there about you, that at some point WARM may give it out. we don't have specifically vendors, because we don't want to say, go through this one
Right,
only,
yeah.
and not be fair to others, so we don't have where to go through.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Mr. Vice Mayor, Fleur, if you mentioned this already, please forgive me, but did you talk about the tips training and so forth? You did? Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Okay. Mobile food vendor exemptions.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor, members of the council. We just wanted you to see what it was that we were recommending by way of changes that would provide additional exemptions for the mobile food vendors as it relates to Title VIII in the municipal code. And specifically, we were trying to accomplish two things. First of all, we wanted to get away from those redundant inspections that had the appearance of inspecting more than once and so forth, mobile food vendors. But also, we wanted to get out of the temporary pass scenario that would be afforded through the state and the county health department anyway. So those two things should be dealt with regard to the changes that you see in your ordinances, in your draft ordinance, I should say. Mr. Henley, do you want to add anything in addition to that?
I think that's a good summary. We just point out that in discussions with the health department too, there were things that we had listed in our ordinance that they just don't know how they would ever conduct such an inspection, and they don't conduct such an inspection. So we've just pulled those out and tried to make it consistent with their practices.
Can you give some examples?
Examples would be public showers, laundries, dry cleaning establishments, sewer removal, septic sewers.
Questions? Okay. Council vacancy interview questions.
Yes, sir, Mr. Vice Mayor. Council asked that we bring forward a slate of draft questions for you to consider with regard to your interviews that are coming up on August 6th. You'll recall that the window for those applications closes on Friday at close of business. We'd be happy to take any feedback, add questions, wording that needs to be changed, any and all of the above, if council is ready to do that.
Okay. So you have those prepared already?
I thought we included them in the packets.
It's in the
Did we include them in the packets?
Preview packet.
Okay.
Anybody have any questions on those right now?
Have we had very many applicants so far?
Mr. Vice Mayor, Councilman Huber, we technically have had one applicant. We have had a number of folks express interest and commitment, or has that increased? Oh, we're now to 3, okay. We now have 3 technically, those who applied. This morning it was 1. So that number is growing fast and furious.
We've had a flood of one.
Right. We really have had a number of questions and calls and inquiries and those kinds of things, and so, you know, you could be seeing quite a few by the end of the week.
That's okay. That's good.
So if anybody has any questions or concerns about the questions, and just
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A question about, are you willing to run for re-election in 2020? I don't feel real comfortable about asking that, because that's their decision. It's not our decision anyway.
Well, they might not know.
Yeah, so I wonder, does anybody else have any heartburn about that?
Sean,
go ahead.
I mean, maybe we can word it differently. I mean, I don't think we need to peg them into a corner and say, you know, are you gonna, if you get this, will you run again? Would you consider running again in 2020 or something to that effect? Or not having to paint them where they feel obligated, like, yes, you know, I'm putting my name in, I know, because they don't have to run if they don't want to. They're just fulfilling the seat.
Right.
Or at this time, do you have any feeling?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
What would your feeling be?
Is
Because
it
I think
okay?
that's a legitimate thing to ask,
It is.
but.
Is everyone okay with that revision?
They may find they don't like to work with us.
That is true, Bob.
Okay, so I think everybody is in agreement on that.
Oh, or.
But they have any other questions?
Yeah.
If you guys come up with anything else throughout the week, then just let Carter know. Any other questions or comments on it? Response to Verizon concerns?
Mr. Vice Mayor, members of the council, you might recall that with regard to some of the changes that we were proposing, I think we've only read it at one point at this point in time. The ordinances relating to the small cell tower type changes and right-of-way impacts and so forth. Verizon sent some comments through their attorney, and I think we gave you copies maybe 2-3 weeks ago at this point in time. Staff, more particularly the attorney's office, has had the opportunity to work through some of those comments and gauge how it might impact a recommendation that we would bring forward. And so if we could take a few minutes to go through some of those with you tonight and let you know where we're at, and if indeed you have direction or something you'd like to see by way of an amendment, we can work with that and move forward. If I could defer to the attorney, please.
Vice Mayor, Council, thanks for the opportunity to come speak with you today. Actually, it was pretty surprising when they sent the letter directly to Council. They had actually met with me in my office, Verizon had, about a month ago, and I actually asked them for comments on the ordinance because they looked at the existing ordinance and said I'd rather know about any problems that you might have up front than end up in any kind of litigation later. So it was actually a really friendly conversation, and it still is. They just thought because the ordinance was being proposed to council that they were obligated to respond to council, apparently, instead of me. So I got it after you did, and made a call to Sherman and Howard, and we had another really good discussion. So of the points that are in your memo, we've addressed almost all of them except the last one, and that's the permitted use in the old Yellowstone district. They would like wireless towers to be there, and that actually makes a lot of sense for us too as traffic increases. The problem is we've spent all kinds of money in the old Yellowstone district to make it beautiful, and there's nothing in the FCC regs that necessarily makes them make it pretty. And but they're willing to. They understand our concern, and they would like to propose language to us to make it a permitted use, but agree to language up front so that it doesn't make a mess of the old Yellowstone district and that it's aesthetically pleasing. The rest of the points on here we've pretty much come to an agreement with, and it's pretty straightforward. So other than that, there's two other things to point out. One was Bob asked me earlier, he said, I really thought they would complain about the costs for deploying wireless facilities. That's probably coming. We have a master license agreement to negotiate with them separate from the ordinance that's in place, and they have already told us that our costs are higher than surrounding states, and we provided the studies to them so they can look through it and see what kind of objections they might have, but that's coming. That's not part of this ordinance. And other than that, I'm open to questions.
Questions?
Wallace, I'm not sure who was here when we hired that consultant to tell us about the pricing. Maybe if you wouldn't mind, give us a little background on where we were coming from when we hired the consultant.
Sure. We hired Bob Dushin from River Oaks Communication, who's been involved in the telecommunications industry and the regulations of it since, I believe, the Telecom Act was passed in 1996. He helped us design our ordinance originally, and then brought in a special consultant for a cost study to find out exactly what it takes, just from a pure cost reimbursement basis, to have people in your right-of-way. And so they brought a whole team out and spent about a week, interviewed, I can't remember exactly how many people, I think at least 20 in depth, and then pulled all kinds of records from the city that give salary structure and such to find out exactly who touches paperwork and other items as they're in the right-of-way. They built an actual cost model to show what our actual costs were, and what we're asking from the telecommunications companies is just to reimburse us for our actual costs. The reports are extensive. I asked them to be conservative with their models, so we didn't have pie-in-the-sky numbers. We talked with our consultants and told them what we don't want is unjustifiable numbers, indefensible numbers, so we feel pretty confident that those numbers are solid, and that's what we're asking from the telecom industry, is to reimburse us for their actual cost to us of being in the right of way.
Any questions? Okay.
Can I ask one question, Vice Mayor? Wallace, do you see the potential then that we will need some amendments to bring forward to the council, or do you think the way it's written is fine and amendments won't be necessary?
Amendments for which piece? For the cost studies, for the
ordinance language.
for the ordinance? I think that's going to be an ongoing process. The FCC is continually looking at new regulations and new ways to preempt city control. And so as of now, as of the third order that the FCC issued, this should take care of FCC concerns, but they're looking at more things all the time, and in fact have started to look at cable as well. So I anticipate that there are going to be amendments over the course of time for a long time.
Wallace, we did talk about, though, that you did make some changes to or some proposals for amendments to the ordinance this week. Is that
Oh, for
correct?
this,
And that's
for this
actually
week?
been written
Yes,
in.
those actually, it's in your memo, and those changes that we made for the Verizon's concerns are highlighted in yellow. They're the only ones that are highlighted in yellow, and they're listed in your report.
And
And
so,
they're very simple.
Mr. Vice Mayor, then I suppose we will need some action this evening to continue those amendments into formal form, right?
Yes, we will,
Okay.
and I believe that's scripted for tonight to pass it on second reading as redrafted. And the redrafts are in yellow in your ordinance.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Anything else? All right, so you want to do the executive session minutes now?
Yeah, we betcha.
Thank you.
All right, we've got 10 minutes to ourselves. As the meeting starts. Yep.
I was gonna bring it up in the roundtable, but since we had time, I wanted to ask to put on a work session, possibly, is in the news media, I've been seeing, and we've known, most of us know, that there has been a lot of red light runners, yellow light runners that's been causing accidents, speeding all throughout town, and I know that we're gonna be talking about the speed limit signs. This, I'm just wondering about getting some data or information regarding this and talk about it at a work session, just put on a thing and talk about it eventually, about it, get some information regarding it, and then see if there's anything we as city council can do to help with the issues if there's finding that, there's a lot of issues or whatnot. So I'm just asking for something like that to be put on a work session and discuss.
We have speed limits on proposed items, maybe we can just add it to that conversation. Because there's already speed limits on here for proposed.
Right, that was the speed limit signs, and we're talking about red light runners and speeding through
Right.
town. I mean, if you wanna put it on both,
I
then
thought that
fine.
was gonna be a broad discussion about speed limits, whether
Yeah, it's
some
supposed to be
should
speed limits
increased
in
or
general.
decreased.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
We can add that conversation to that.
Cause I also wanted to talk about some of
Okay.
those, and no, I don't want to.
It could be speed limits / red lights. The lights.
5 miles an
Over 10. Everyone okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
in the interstate.
But, Mr. Vice Mayor, since we have a couple of minutes here, and I don't know if that, last week I had announced the intention to vote against that, paying for the motorcycle people's insurance. I've thought a lot about since then. While I think that our staff correctly applied the rules and the law, I think our staff, really admirably handled that whole situation, and I agree with the way that they handled it. At this point, I've thought about it, and while I don't think that we have any obligation at all to pay that for those people, at some point, you do things just out of goodwill. And I think that just doing that out of goodwill, that I'm gonna change my position on that, and we'll vote for that bill in consideration. I was a little bit troubled though, and I'm gonna scold all of you guys about this. You sat here and you said, we're not gonna give money to the Korean War veterans who are dying off at an alarming rate because they didn't put an application in according to our time frame. But we are gonna give money to these guys who didn't follow any of our application procedures. I was bothered by that. I gotta tell you guys that. But I think it's probably the right thing to pay for that insurance for those guys.
Anything else?
I do have one question, Bings. It's coming up tonight on the mobile vending parking downtown. Did you happen to see get an email from Mr. Houck, John Houck?
I didn't.
So, we all received one. He had brought up the fact, do we know anything about the Kiwanis had a trailer parked down there for 24 hours downtown?
I saw it, and I wasn't back down there for 24 hours, but I did see it down there at one point.
So that concern was brought up by him in an email today that I received, that, once again, we have rules that are put in place, but yet, for whatever reason, the Kiwanis Club had and I think it was a Friday night into a Saturday morning, but it was a 24-hour period that trailer was down there. Never ticketed, never told to move, and of course his position on it is that he has to follow the rules and apply for permits and whatnot, and they seem to just get a pass on it. So I'd kind of like to know a little bit behind what happened with that.
No problem.
Yeah.
Mr. Vice Mayor. Councilman, did you happen to get a date and location and all that kind of thing?
It was this last Friday.
On Friday?
Let's see.
All right, he said on our street, less than a block from the brewery. So I know it was on the north side.
July 5th, and he threw a picture in here, so maybe. It's a dark picture. Looks like he was there second and
What is that?
second and center where the old Crescent Moon coffee shop where the JS Chinese was at. It was sitting
Okay.
in front of the business there.
Okay. On second?
On Second Street.
Okay,
yes.
okay. Very good. We'll follow up. You betcha.
He said, starting Friday morning last week, July 5th, and went through Saturday morning, because there was some sort of an event down
Shall we? Ready? I now call the July 16th, 2019 regular council meeting to order. Would council members please denote your presence by depressing your yes switch? Chair would entertain a motion to by minute action excuse the absence of Mayor Powell.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councilman Huber, seconded by Councilman Friel. Please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
All members voting aye, motion passed.
And council meetings are also televised and can be viewed on cable channel 192. In keeping with Mayor Powell's tradition, does anybody want to come up and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance this evening? Okay.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve by minute action the minutes of the July 2nd, 2019 regular council meeting as published in the Casper Star Tribune on July 12th, 2019.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Pacheco, seconded by Councilman Bates. Any amendments? Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
All members voting aye, motion passed.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve by minute action the minutes of the July 2nd, 2019 executive session.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Hopkins and seconded by Councilwoman Lutz. Any amendments? Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
All members voting aye, motion passed.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve by minute action the July 16th, 2019 bills and claims as audited by City Manager Napier.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councilman Huber, seconded by Councilman Hopkins. Any abstentions? Please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passed.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve by minute action the July 16th, 2019 conflict claim as audited by City Manager Napier.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved by Councilman Bates, seconded by Councilman Pacheco. Any abstentions? Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
All members voting aye, motion passed.
Now is the time that we invite anyone in the audience who wishes to speak with the council to come forward. As stated on the first page of the agenda, we ask the following. Please state your name and address. Direct all questions and comments to me. No personal attacks on staff or council will be tolerated. Council will not respond to personnel matters. These will be referred to the city manager. Questions posed by speakers may or may not respond to by council, and presentations will be limited to 5 minutes, and no duplication of speakers will be allowed.
How you guys doing tonight?
Good.
That's fantastic. Glad to hear it. Listen, I'm here on My Kings. You know, everybody believes in God and the flag and this and that. I believe up above is about a round table of 10 English kings.
Can we get your name and address?
That's Craig. Craig.
Okay.
All right. And, well, let me throw in my dad's last name, Sheets. Let's give him some honor, huh, on this one. So, you know, I believe it's something above, and I believe there's 10 kings of a round table. And there's only 2 issues to ordinance, and that's poison and projectile weapons, such as the chief has to carry, probably really doesn't want to. I don't know, I haven't discussed it with him, and I'm not gonna. But we got some projectiles here. If you'll notice, I'm gonna point out 9/10. If you look at the marquee on this nuclear dock, oh, I guarantee I'm probably pretty correct with all the numbers. But the one I'm concerned about is the 9/10. Thumb down is a 9, if you ever notice that. And thumb up's a 6. And we'll get to the 1269 shortly. But mocking my kings on a nuclear basis is not good. 10 kings being mocked by a nuclear dock, I have to point that out. As well, you know, it's a murder, right? When you guys all agree, you know, fire upon us all would be murder. I mean, I'm certainly not fond of that thought or any of your kids. You look like you got some pretty good kids over there. Sharp looking guy. But you know what I'm saying. So let's move on. You will read the codes on this, right? Everybody? Mm-hmm. You'll go through all the paperwork. I appreciate that. All right, and then we got 1269. This one here, law. The word law, land and water. I think I hit the keynote on the head there. If you cast nuclear devices upon water and land at the same time, who knows how long it would be until it got to rain. And I've noticed there's a lot of rain in Wyoming in the summer. And I love it. I sit out in it and I appreciate it. So that fact. And then I was wrong at the last meeting with the ammonia or liquid uranium. That's impossible. It's all a solid form. So you've got your chemical train. That's chemical warfare. And then you got your hot shot. That's nuclear mobile train. God. Everybody see God? It's the deputy star. I'll leave that one alone for a little while. We'll see how far we get. You know, I just want my SSI back and be on my way. And here's the mock to the meth labs. All right, I don't know if anybody knows what volatile cleaning is, but if you look in those great hills you got, fantastic looking hills. That's minerals, granted, from scraping glass domes. You know, I can't get into this all night long because I only got 3 minutes. So, mock on minerals, it's all there. You know, you're mocking my English kings, or you're targeting English kings' sons. I would suggest let's not do that anymore. And if there's any in trouble in the system, the shelters, let's get them out. Shelter beds are coming in next. Those are all nuclear supply. That's money, funding to the meth labs, shelters, Salvation Army, jails, bunking up. You know, I really don't like sleeping partners. Shaw Johnson, I mean, you might have a good looking wife. I'm not going to disrespect you on that, but I really like sleeping alone. So if you get my meaning on that, and as well, meth labs to farms, don't mock my king's horse. You know, I got Clydesdales all over my van. I love that horse. It's a great horse.
30 seconds.
And with that, I wish you all a bid farewell. And thanks for letting me speak. Really appreciate it. I'll be back on the blood chart coming up on the next meeting. That burgundy fluid is not good blood type. So I'll be back with that the next meeting. Will that be okay with everybody?
Sure.
All right. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Any questions? Okay.
Hey, good to see you, Mike.
See you.
You too, sir. Is the mayor okay?
Yeah.
No health issues?
Nope.
I'll see him in the next one?
Yes, sir.
Great.
Anyone else wish to speak with council?
Mr. Mayor, Council, Paul Pad, Cherokee Lane, Casper, Wyoming. Acting Mayor, Mr. Mayor, whichever. Deputy Mayor. At the last work session, you guys covered some things that I've been talking about, and I just wanted to say thank you for, especially Councilman Friel, for stepping up and understanding that there was a difference between, you know, the guide and the actual law that needs to be addressed, and that is being addressed and such. So basically, I'm going to be, you know, really brief. I have to admit I did not read the proposed changes that are coming up, other than what was given to me at that meeting. I haven't read if there's been any changes since that or what it was. So I know that'll be coming up in the future here. But basically, I just wanted to thank you all for your consideration on that. I know the vote wasn't unanimous, but hopefully we still get there. So that's all I have tonight. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Pad? Thank you.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, or is it Vice Mayor?
Either one.
Council members. Keith Goodenough, 333 South Saconee. My first comment has to do with something most politicians don't like to do. I made a mistake at the last meeting. I made some comments about the Masterson place, and I was confused because I thought the appropriation 4 years ago went to the old Masterson place, which has now been sold as in private hands, but it actually went to the new Masterson place, which is just south of the hospital and about ready to open. So, like I say to my wife many times, I was wrong. The second thing I'd like to talk to you about is that I'd like to announce I plan to apply for the vacancy here on the city council. I moved since I served on the council to the east side, and so I'm going to apply for that. And as part of that, wanted to ask if there's others here in the crowd. I see Terry Wingeter here. I'm hoping he's here to announce his intention as well, but I don't have any specific knowledge of that. I just think he'd be a good on the council as well. But I'd like to advocate for as much transparency in your process as possible. And there's different ways that can be handled. I saw in the paper you're going to do basically what's been done in the past. But I was here when Paige Fagan was, when an appointment was made for Paige Fagan. I was here when one was made for Lynn Whalen. I was here when one was made for Guy Paget. I was here when one was made for Stephanie Boster. And my recollection is there was two different processes used. One involved the use of the small conference room, and the other involved the use of this chambers here. And I would just like to encourage you to use the large chambers because, as you know, there's limited seating in the council room. So I'd encourage you to put it, plus there's, well, Bresnan or whoever can broadcast it better, I think, and so I'd encourage you to go that route. And as much transparency as possible. I know the actual decision is made in executive session, but it's also possible to have some of the discussion in public session. So you can consider those. I also had a comment about your executive session later today, and I see you're going to be talking about security. And security is in the list of exemption in the open meetings law. There's certain exemptions when you go into executive session, litigation, property acquisition, and I didn't realize public safety or security was part of that, but I looked it up using the internet, and it is. And so I wanted to remind you that there's basic rules governing executive sessions. And here about 5 years ago, a fine citizen paid out of her own pocket to sue the city council over an issue having to do with executive sessions. And she won. And I thought the key points were that minutes have to be kept of executive sessions, and the decision that was made has to be made in public. You don't have to reveal the discussion, but the actual decision is required to be made in public session. So I think those were the two key points that came out of the lawsuit that impacted my pocketbook a little bit. And that's all I have tonight. So I'm looking forward to interviewing with you, and I've been around a long time. I don't think you should hold that against me. But thank you very much for your kind attention.
Any questions for Mr. Goodenough?
Well, Mr. Vice Mayor, since you spoke about moving on up to the east side, are you going to be singing the Jefferson song?
As soon as I can learn the gang sign for east side, I thought I would sing that. Okay.
Any other questions? All right, well, thank you, and good luck.
You're doing a fine job, Mr. Vice.
Well, thank you.
Keith Rowland, 542 South Durban. I want to make a few comments about the insurance issue that we've been dragged out for about the last two and a half months. First is, I think the problem could have been alleviated in the first place is if the police chief or whoever was enforcing the insurance would have realized we're changing our policy, we're merging two different documents together, and presented this gentleman and his associates with, here's a copy of the ordinance regarding parades, here's our copy of our events planning guide, and we are changing it, and let them actually read it. By not anticipating this potential problem, all of a sudden it's led us for 2 months, and it's been an enormous amount of time that could have been handled within a short period of time. I'm sure these people, if they explained to them, they're very intelligent, that they would have, I understand, all right, we'll move on, we're going to buy the insurance. Issue would have been solved. The second thing is with the same problem with the insurance is, then we have the reaction here. I can understand when these people were saying that they were lied to by the police chief because they didn't see it any place written down, they'd never done it before, so the reaction was quote unquote lie. Then we have the reaction of council member and the city manager of getting real defensive about the city employee. I think your reactions were completely inappropriate. It should have been a professional one, where you say, all right, we don't have all the information, give us a call or email us with all the information, we'll get the information from the police chief, and then at that point, make a determination. Too many people were real quick to make a determination and defend the police chief without knowing exactly what took place. The third thing is, this is a problem that keeps happening here in the city of Casper. We keep having these small little things. Sometimes they're small, sometimes they're large. And over the years that I've lived here, we've had some real disaster, and it all caused by personnel problems. We had a power line. We had a building that was built in a power line on Beverly. I took a picture of it. It was finally taken down. But before that, members of the planning department and inspectors didn't do anything. We had a pedestrian shed that was built on East 2nd Street that was not up to code. The planning person there, the code enforcer, says, I'm not going to enforce it up to code. Until I threatened to take him into court, he finally blocked off the street, but they weren't doing that. We have had a huge hole that was built in Missouri Street. It was about 10 feet by 8 by about 14 feet deep. And I said, you have to put a plate over the top. They said, oh no, they only told us we had to put an orange caution tape around, which of course blew in, and you could find a whole car go in that hole. It was there for 4 days. We have $200,000 or $300,000, I don't know if you guys know this, of infrastructure of mechanicals built on East 2nd Street, just west of Wyoming Boulevard. That was put in there quite a few years ago. Members of the city council, when this was disclosed, they claimed, many of them claimed, that they didn't even give approval for this. And it's sitting in that underneath the street, supposedly for future planters. We had a $5 million loan that was almost made to the Civic Auditorium Group that was based on override royalties for Trona mine that was never developed, and it was never developed. But the problem is, no one in the city council, nor members of the planning department or in the financial department, anything, did any due diligence in how much actual Trona would have to be mined out of there to pay back that loan. And it was never done. We would have gotten stuck if I didn't bring it up and also threatened to take him into court because we violated the law. We would have loaned them $5 million and never gotten paid back. We almost annexed 7,000 acres of north of the city, and no one in the planning department, no one in the planning commission, no one in the city council made any reference to the FAA regulations for Hartford Field. There's a 100-to-1 ratio that's out there by the FAA. They could have not built hardly anything near that area. They would have annexed into the city, but nothing could have been built out there without FAA approval. We had an infrastructure dispute in the Fort Casper area. A number of people did not want that done because they couldn't afford it. The thing is, the city was using not property owners, they were using residents to block it. It was almost blocked. It was not blocked because in hearing about the fact I challenged many of the signatures, I said, these are not property owners, they're residents. We have a terrible problem here with what we expect our personnel employees to do. And the same thing is with our school districts. 90s, A's.
20 seconds.
30 seconds, yeah. 70s, rather 80s B's, 70s C's. Where I come from, an 81 is D. Here it's a B. We need to raise our standards for personnel and get them from, basically over the years, many of them have been inept, in my opinion, and incompetent. We need to raise the bar.
Any questions? Okay. Anyone else? Good evening.
Hello, my name is Jamie Bates and I live on Indian Paintbrush Street. Mayor and Council, the month of July always makes me reflect on freedom. It's a natural overflow from the 4th of July celebration. This year, though, I had cause to reflect on the freedoms that I enjoy as a woman because of the theme of this year's parade, in which we acknowledge the 150-year anniversary of the women's right to vote in Wyoming. It's hard to think of a time in which I, as a woman, would have my right of free speech restricted or controlled by my father, by my husband, or by any form of government. I would like to thank this council and this state for protecting my rights to vote, to participate in various political processes, such as speaking at city council, and my right to speak and share my opinion in whatever medium I choose. I think it is vitally important that every citizen and resident be allowed to share their thoughts and opinions without restriction or censorship. I look forward to watching the upcoming council work sessions and the council sessions to see how this council decides to frame their ethics resolutions in such a way as to guide council without restricting or censoring them or those closest to them. I thank you again for protecting our freedoms. On another note, I would like to ask council to please reconsider the speed limit between McKinley and Kimball. 20 miles an hour is really too slow. It wears and tears on brakes very quickly because you have to ride your brakes all the way down when you're going west. And I don't think that's reasonable at all. Additionally, I would like to suggest that the city put on their website in the streets section an interactive map that can tell residents which streets are managed by the city, which ones are managed by the county, and which ones are managed by the state. So that way residents can easily see who they need to be complaining to if they have an issue with the traffic lights, with potholes, or with turn signals, anything going on. Because I see a lot of complaints and they're not city streets that they're complaining about, that's state streets, but they don't know that. So I think it'd be really helpful, and I think it's something that we can put on the webpage pretty easy. So that's it. Thank you.
Any question for Mrs. Bates? Anything? Okay. Anyone else here to speak to council? Okay. Please read the consent agenda titles.
Establishing August 6, 2019 as the public hearing date for the consideration of the following 4 items. The rezoning of lots 25 through 26, Block 8, East Burlington Addition from M1 Limited Industrial and C2 General Business to entirely C2 General Business located at 442 North Lenox. Zone change of the former North Casper Elementary School on lots 51 through 69 and 151 through 169, Block 29 North Casper Addition to the City of Casper, Natrona County, Wyoming. And vacated alley adjacent to lots 51 through 64 and lots 151 through 164, Block 29, North Casper addition to the City of Casper, Natrona County, being also described as the north 350 feet of the alley within Block 29, North Casper addition to the City of Casper, Natrona County, Wyoming, from ED Educational District zoning to C2 General Business located at 1014 Glenarm Street. Amending Chapter 10.72, Article I, Parades of the Casper Municipal Code, and amending Chapter 8.04, Businesses.
The chair would entertain a motion to, by minute action, establish the public hearing dates just read.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Friel, seconded by Councilman Huber. Any abstentions or nay votes? Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
All members voting aye, motion passed.
Council will now discuss the Fleming addition. This item will be open for public comment and for discussion by council. Please read the ordinance on third reading by title only.
An ordinance approving the approving the Fleming subdivision agreement and the final plat of the Fleming addition.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve on third reading the ordinance just read.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Pacheco, seconded by Councilman Hopkins. Council will now listen to public comment. Public comments are limited to 5 minutes and no duplication of speakers. Is there anyone here to speak on the Fleming addition? Okay, discussion amongst council. Any amendments? Please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
All members voting aye, motion passed.
Council will now discuss the rezoning of 221 and 227 North Park Street. This item will be open for public comment and for discussion by council. Please read the ordinance on third reading by title only.
An ordinance approving a zone change of Block 60, Lot 9, and the north 20 feet of Lot 10 and Block 60, west half of Lots 10 through 12, accepting the north 20 feet of Lot 10, Casper Addition subdivision in the city of Casper, Wyoming.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve on third reading the ordinance just read.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Bates, seconded by Councilman Lutz. Council will now listen to public comment. Public comments are limited to 5 minutes and no duplication of speakers. Anyone here to speak on this issue?
Brad Hopkins, Executive Director, Wyoming Rescue Mission, 230 North Park. Mr. Vice Mayor, right? Thank you. Just briefly to say thank you, Council, and for your support on this important rezoning for service to a critical need here in our community, and that's 2 separate residency for recovery for men and women that are getting back up on their feet and independent again. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Any questions by council? Okay. Anyone else here to speak on this issue? Any discussion by council? Amendments? Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
All members voting aye, motion passed.
Council will now discuss the ordinance as redrafted pertaining to wireless communication facilities. This item will be open for public comment and discussion by council. Please read the ordinance on second reading by title only.
An ordinance amending section 17.12.124 of the Casper Municipal Code pertaining to wireless communication facilities.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve on second reading the ordinance just read as redrafted.
So moved.
Second.
We're slow tonight. Moved by Councilman Friel, seconded by Councilman Pacheco. Council will now listen to public comment. Anyone here to speak on this issue? Any discussion amongst council? Amendments? Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
All members voting aye, motion passed.
Council will now discuss the ordinance regarding mobile vendor parking. This item will be open for public comment and discussion by council. Please read the ordinance on second reading by title only.
An ordinance amending chapter 10.36.031 of the Casper Municipal Code.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve on second reading the ordinance just read.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Pacheco, seconded by Councilman Friel. Council will now listen to public comment.
Good evening. How's everyone tonight?
Good.
My name is Dave Hinton. I live at 1035 Monte Vista Drive. I may be getting the cart before the horse here because I don't know what happened in your work session last week about this ordinance. But as I mentioned 2 weeks ago, I have a charity event Saturday in front of the Lyric. And I have to be there cooking all day. And the ordinance says, the way it is now, says I can't sit up until 1 o'clock. That doesn't give me enough time. So I guess I'm asking if there's a way you could somehow allow me to do that for this charity event.
Isn't this the exemption amendment that we're making?
Mr. Vice Mayor, members of the council, council will recall that we did have a representative from the county health department in place during the work session last week. And they indicated that they felt that they had some opportunity to work with Mr. Hinton in order to make that arrangement happen. And so pursuant to the regulations that they observe and they probably work with Mr. Hinton on, it sounded as though they had an option that they were willing to exercise with the speaker. So from that standpoint, it didn't appear as though there was a need to create an amendment that would address this particular situation.
And the current ordinance wouldn't hinder any of that as it reads now?
Mr. Vice Mayor, the ordinance that you are amending, and with regard to the amendment that you potentially could pass, that would indeed give you the flexibility with regard to some of these one-off kinds of needs here and there. And so if indeed council felt the need to work with a vendor like Mr. Hinton in the future, I think that authority would exist with regard to the exemption power that you're creating for yourself in this particular ordinance.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. Correct me if I'm wrong, but in that discussion that we had with the health department, our discussion was for the preparation of food on the trailer off-site to potentially be able to move back into a parking spot. So it really wouldn't be affected by the way the rule is now for parking downtown. It sounded as though the health department would work with you in order to prepare off-site on your trailer and then bring it back. As long it wouldn't be a large distance, but it sounded like they would work with you to be able to do that off-site.
Did you speak to Ruth? Is that who you were visiting with?
I believe that's
yeah.
Yeah. So I need to go see her, is what you're saying?
Right, yes.
Yeah, okay. All right.
Well, and Mr. Vice Mayor.
Go ahead.
Obviously, we can't speak for them.
Sure,
But
sure.
my understanding and recollection, the thrust of it was that they had something that they thought would accommodate what what your needs would be, but that's my takeaway from it. And
Yeah.
so, and I've been wrong before. Everybody always.
Oh, bye. Yeah.
I guess I could maybe add one more thing. It just, the takeaway that I had from it was it sounded as though the preparation of food, not on the trailer but elsewhere, is what they're trying to stop from or keep from happening. So you can't prepare it in your house and then put it on your trailer and transport it somewhere else. But it did sound like that as long as you were putting the food on your trailer and preparing it on your trailer, that could be done off-site, not a significant distance, but if you got with her, she'd be able to tell you exactly how that could be done to accommodate this situation.
Okay. So the ordinance that you're going to have a second reading on, were the hours of operation, like the one on weekends and 3 during the week, has that been amended at all?
No.
Not yet
No, this,
is the proper.
go ahead.
It has not yet, but until the third reading is closed, that is still part of this ordinance, and in theory, it could still be amended.
Okay. So I can just sit down and shut up? Is that good with everybody?
Anybody have any more questions or comments? Okay.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else here to speak on this issue? Any discussion by council? Go ahead.
I'd just like to bring up, just be representative of a citizen who reached out to us today regarding the mobile vendor parking permits. He just wanted to bring our attention to lack of enforcement just on the times that these types of vendors have been downtown without maybe paying their permit fees for their spots, and then still being there for an extended period of time past the period that they would have actually been granted had they been given a permit, had they purchased a permit. And then he just also wanted to point out to us that he, as a downtown business owner, is actually not in support of the hour restrictions. And so I just wanted to make sure that we got his opinions voiced for him.
Any other comments by council? Oh, go ahead.
As I've stated, and I know that we talked about last work session or at one point about bringing up the times, and nobody wanted to bring up the time restrictions. But I still say on Saturdays and Sundays, it should be allowed all morning, all day. So I just want to clarify that again, that I disagree with number 5.
Any further discussion? Any amendments? Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
Councilmember Lutz voting nay, motion passed.
Please read the consent resolutions by title only.
Item 10A1, a resolution approving the vacation and replat of lots 1, 2, and 3, Block 75, Casper Edition, and parcels described in instruments number 551531 and 551532, City of Casper, Natrona County, Wyoming, located in a portion of the northeast corner of the northeast quarter of Section 9, Township 33 North, Range 79 West, 6 p.m. to create the A and B Bank Addition and the associated subdivision agreement. Item 10A2, a resolution approving the creation of a disability council for the City Council, adopting the bylaws and appointing the officers and members. Item 10A3, a resolution authorizing an agreement with Chalk Buttes Landscaping, Inc. for the Highland Park Cemetery Irrigation Improvements 2019 project. Item 10A4, a resolution authorizing a contract for professional services with WLC Engineering and Surveying for design and construction administration services for the Morad Park to Walmart Trail project. Item 10A5, a resolution authorizing an agreement with Grizzly Excavating and Construction LLC for the 5th Street and Beach Sanitary Sewer Replacement Project. And item 10A6, a resolution authorizing a contract with BOMAC Educational Services, RSI, to provide critical incident management simulation-based training for initial response personnel, Train the Trainer program.
The chair would entertain a motion to adopt the consent resolutions just read.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Hopkins, seconded by Councilman Bates. City Manager report.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I just wanted to point out the fact that indeed, with the passage of this consent agenda, that the Disability Council would be created. And I applaud the council for taking that effort. I think it's a great way to include a portion of our community that has, in many cases in the past, been disenfranchised, so to speak. And I'm happy to report that they already have a couple issues that they'd like some attention brought to, and I suspect you'll be getting some recommendations here soon. Thank you.
Any abstentions or nay votes? Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
All members voting aye, motion passed.
Please read the consent minute action title.
Authorizing the purchase of one-ton pickup with dump body and accessories from Fremont Motors to be used in the cemetery section of the Parks and Recreation Department.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve the consent minute action agenda item just read.
So moved.
Second. Moved by Councilman Friel, seconded by Councilman Huber. Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
All members voting aye, motion passed.
At this time, we ask council members to bring forward relevant concerns or items of interest. We'll start with Councilman Hopkins.
Yeah, this week, the Amoco Reuse Joint Powers Board finalized their budget, and so did the Economic Development Joint Powers Board. And I just wanted to mention that happy birthday to my youngest granddaughter, Mira.
Councilwoman Lutz.
Nothing tonight.
Councilman Bates.
Nothing.
Councilman Pacheco.
I don't have anything. I think, and I've always said this, and this isn't going to be any new comments from me, but I think the public discourse through probably in the last 5 years, maybe a little bit more than that, has changed tremendously on how we discuss issues. And especially when it comes to government and politics and how we do those things. And I think the thing that we can learn from it, as have I, because I've made a lot of mistakes in that sense, where I feel like I can come across in certain ways when I'm trying to get my point across. I think the mindful part of it is how we address one another, and the decorum and how we address as we look towards and seeing human beings across us, that we have to understand that we're going to disagree, but that we can do that in respectful, mindful ways, and not understanding that each human being possesses the dignity of a human person. And I think we have to realize that every single day. And I think now more than ever, we have to be more mindful with the criticalness, the harsh language that is used even on our national level of how we communicate with one another, because nothing will get accomplished if we don't do that. And I think that's what we have to be mindful of, how we communicate and how we work together. And I'm appreciative of this body here where we can, and Councilman Huber had said a few things to us about his disappointment of what we did, but I was able to lean over to him and laugh a little bit just 2 seconds later, because I respect him. And we may not agree on everything, but I do respect every individual on this body to do that. We have to be mindful of that. We have to be examples for our children, for our grandchildren, how we do it, and we can do better. I know we can do better. So thank you so very much, and it's an honor to serve on this body with these people.
Okay, Councilman Huber.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. I'd like to echo what Councilman Pacheco just said. You know, one of the things that sometimes is kind of difficult when you sit and you listen to comments, public comments, or whatever, and if someone is saying something that is just not accurate, it's always tough to to sit there and still recognize that, well, that's their opinion and their feeling, and they're certainly entitled to that, and that that's a problem, but it's something that we all have to work with. And I really, I'm going to say this, I'm really deeply troubled by Donald Trump's comments, which I view as deeply offensive and racist and just horrible and deplorable. And I'm shocked that more bodies and more people aren't just raising up and condemning him for things like saying, well, just go back where you came from. I think that is just horrible to the core. And I'm sorry, if I offend anybody with that, I don't care, because I think when people who are supposed to be leaders make those kind of comments, and everybody just sits there blithely and says nothing. It was Martin Luther King who said, who talked about the judgment not of the bad people who did things, but of the good people who stood by and did nothing. Thank you for listening to my rant.
Thank you. Councilman Friel?
Well, Councilman Hopkins and Bates and myself were able to be a part of the OYD Oscars on Monday, which were awards given out to different businesses or redevelopment in the OYD district. And I think Liz did an awesome job on that, on the award ceremony itself. And there were a lot of awards that were given out, a lot of good things happening down there. So I just hope everybody keeps up the good work and move forward with that development. So.
Thank you. The only thing I have, just in regards to what was discussed by Councilman Pacheco and Councilman Huber, is, thank God for the anti-federalists, because without them we wouldn't have the Bill of Rights. And the Bill of Rights was inserted into the Constitution to protect the minority more than anything. The smallest minority is the individual. So, obviously the First Amendment, the freedom of speech, is extremely important, but it does go both ways. Everybody is entitled to their opinion, and everybody's entitled to express their opinion. And that's really all I have to say about that. So, the next meetings of the City Council will be a work session to be held at 4:30 p.m. Tuesday, July 23rd, 2019 in the Council's meeting room, and a regular Council meeting to be held at 6 p.m. Tuesday, August 6th, 2019 in the Council chambers. A notice of an executive session to take place at this date and during this meeting was given. We need to meet to discuss personnel and security. Therefore, the chair would entertain a motion to adjourn into executive session, and at the conclusion of that executive session, to reconvene this regular meeting solely for the purposes of adjournment of this regular meeting.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councilman Huber, seconded by Councilman Bates. There being a majority of members present and a motion to adjourn into executive session having been moved and seconded, that motion requiring 2/3 majority of the council present, please cast your votes. And please record the vote.
All members voting aye, motion passed.
A greater than 2/3 majority of the council voted in favor of the motion, and we are hereby adjourned into an executive session.